Callie came to us because her mom attends here, right? The family tradition. And when she moved back here to San Francisco in the midst of COVID, she started showing up here. And Callie comes from a performer family. Her mother and father are performers. Her sister's a Broadway performer. There's a performer in the family. But Callie didn't want to stand up and sing. Didn't at first want to be part of our music team. We took a lot of cajoling, right? Because that's not who she is. She's a more of a backstage kind of gal, even with the pink hair, right? And I just bring that out because the power of one of us stepping forward and showing exactly who we are, right? And what we have within us is amazing, because you never know what anyone is capable of by what they did before, or by what they've been conditioned to or told is their slot in life. And the amazing power of this moment in the world is that we're recognizing how much power and diversity in perspective, in wisdom, and intelligence, and experience we have shut out as a society, as a culture, as a way of being. I'm sitting here watching. I have a fellow minister in the house with me. The pastor of the Methodist Church in Napa is sitting here with us. Mary Lee is here. And the shift that when Protestant denominations started allowing women to be ordained, and Unity started ordaining women back in the 1880s, but that shift of bringing the feminine divine wisdom into our spiritual conversation changes everything. When we started letting openly gay men be ministers, not closeted gay men be priests or ministers or whatever it was, and to have the conversation about what it is to be out exactly who you are and the perspective you bring to the world. As they sit and look at this multicultural, multi-dimensioned, multifaceted, multi-generational church, I'm like, wow, what richness, what abundance, what power we have in that diversity, in that wholeness, in that honoring of each and every one of our journey. We use the phrase all the time here from a Catholic theologian, Pierre de Chardin. Excuse me, I'm tripping all over his name. But he said that we are not human beings having a spiritual experience, but we are spiritual beings having a human one. Well, this human journey that has gotten us all here in these temples we call these bodies has given us a perspective on the divine, on spirituality, on the journey of life that is so precious. That I want to create a culture and a community here that lifts up all those voices. That's why you've seen us doing community Sundays where many different people tell their perspective. Last year at Easter, we did resurrection stories from the community. In Dias de los Muertos, we'd had our Hispanic community tell us the journey they have been on in their spirituality. And in our Gay Pride service, we had 4 or 5 different people tell us their journey in getting here to be out and proud. That continues every day because we come from a certain perspective and a certain experience. Doesn't mean that we're not one power, that we're part of the one, the divine. It just means we're a fascinating facet of it, an intriguing and powerful reflection of divine life and energy. And Unity's teachings have been clear from the beginning that the primary principle is this one. There is only one presence and one power active in the universe and in my life. God. Now let's unpack that. God. right? You may get triggered by it. I remember when I first started here as the minister, people came up and said, can't we say goddess, God and goddess? And I say, God does not have a gender, folks. God doesn't have genitalia. What we're talking about as God is something that is beyond the physical, something that incorporates everything. I use this analogy for it too. You know, a fish is part of the ocean, right? And you see the ocean, a fish is wholly part of that ocean. We are in God, like a fish is in the ocean. Fully part of it, always surrounding us, and we can't see it. Everything, the redwood timbers that built this building, that grew for 1,000 years before someone cut them down, are still alive and resonance with the power of the divine in us right now. Every single one of us is part of the divine. And that, one of my teachers in school said, the only reason we have 5 unity principles is because we don't really believe the first one. We don't really believe that there's only one. So since principle 2, we're going to be doing a 5-week study on this. Misa's going to go deep into the second principle next week, launching it in perspective of what we've been missing with the richness of the African American community as we launch our Black History Month. But we are divinity in expression, and therefore we are inherently good. Each and every one of you, like that fish in the ocean, is the divine in physical form. Now, that doesn't mean we always behave that way, but the truth of who we are, the truth of our being, is that we are the blessed children of the divine, expressions of the divine in words and actions, in practice. That's why we sang, "You are the face of God." And someone was singing it right back to you. And owning that has been the journey of my lifetime. And I'm certain that many of you are experiencing that as well. Our third unity principle is that we create our thoughts. We create with our thoughts and beliefs. And I would add to that our feelings. Our feeling nature is one of the most powerful creative tools we have. Just like God said, "Let there be light," we can say it every day. In the midst of the pain of this moment, we can say, "Let there be light. Let there be love. Let there be wholeness. Let there be peace," as we bring it. As we bring it. As Dr. King taught us too, you know, darkness does not drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Only we can do that when we are the light of the world, when we choose it. Our fourth principle is that through prayer and meditation, we align our hearts, our mind, our whole being with that divine energy. We use prayer as a tool not to change God. There's no change necessary. Prayer changes who, folks? Us, for the divine. We use prayer and meditation to align ourselves with that higher principle, to remember who we are, to remember what's possible. Scripture again, with God, Matthew, with God, what's possible? All things, not just some, not a few, not a little bit. Now, please, can I have a morsel? Please, sir, may I have some more? It's not a Dickens novel, folks. With God, all things are possible. All. And we come like beggars to the ocean with a teacup, saying, "Can I have a little? Can I have a little?" No. What do we want? Peace. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? When do we want it? Now. I don't believe you. What do we want? Peace. When do we want it? Now. One more time. What do we want? Peace. When do we want it? Now. So how are we going to achieve it, folks? How are we going to be that peaceful? And that peaceful doesn't mean passive. You get that? We're going to have to learn this lesson all over again. Peaceful does not mean passive or complicit. Peaceful means radical. Radical, because the world has taught us that the only way to get what we want is to fight, is to use violence, is to use oppression. We are grown up in that culture. We are steeped in it. We, myself included, have used violence as a way of getting what I wanted, or in frustration, or in anger. I have lashed out in violence of words, violence of behavior, violence in many ways. I have been beaten by people. I have been attacked. But that doesn't mean that I get to react, but I get to respond. And when I can pause, as Reverend Elizabeth talked about earlier, in that second, in that blink, and respond to love, respond with love, wow, what a difference that can make, right? What a difference we can make in the world. The power of peace. It only takes a second, a moment of realization to change the world. And our fifth principle is that it's not enough to know this intellectually. We actually have to do it, folks. And it's not enough to do it here in the room, right? It's to do it outside when the homeless person is scary. To do it when you are confronted with someone who's spewing anger and vitriol at you. Those are the moments where the spiritual rubber meets the road. And that's what we're going to dive into for this week and the next weeks. Is how do we do that? Here they are, the 5 basic unity principles. We're going to dive deep into them. They're on our website, and they have videos from Reverend Deanne and I doing them last year. And we'll have the videos up of us talking about them this one. But I want to go back and talk about one power today. One power and one presence active in the universe and in our lives. The divine. When we talk about one power, again, it's not a gendered being up in the sky choosing. It's the very energy of life that sustains us all. As Callie sang, it's the very air we breathe. Right? She sang in the opening song. That's the divine. There's as much God in the breath we're inhaling and exhaling right now as there is in the whole universe, because God cannot be made into small bits. There is only the entity of God. It can't be subdivided, and we can't hoard it. It belongs to all beings, all life in the universe, not just us. So when we step into that, we get to understand, and this is from one of our first teachers, Emily Cady, who wrote about the divine and was a minister and doctor in the 1800s. And she talks about God is the source of our existence every moment. Not simply omnipotent, all-powerful, but an omnipotence, all power. God is all power in the universe. Do you get that? The very energy of the life itself, the dark matter, the everything is the omnipotence of God. So there's nowhere you can go where God is not. So there is one power and one presence, again, means that you're it. Tag, right? That you are the energy of the divine. These walls are the energy of the divine. The music itself is the energy of the divine in infinite expression, just like the universe is in infinite expression. And God is not all-knowing, omniscience, but omniscience, all knowledge. All the wisdom of the ages, all the wisdom that we can tap into that comes through us and in us, but not necessarily just us. There is wisdom in the trees. There's wisdom in the earth. There's wisdom in the universe. There's wisdom in the movement of the seasons. There's wisdom as we age. There's wisdom in the child, in the baby that sits in the bag right there. God, there's such wisdom and peace and joy and serenity that we can tap into when we acknowledge the oneness of it all. And that God is not omnipresent. More, God is omnipresence. Presence itself, consciousness itself, awareness itself. So that we stop talking of God as he or she, or God as a being, but God as the very energy of life. And what do we know about energy? Right? It can't be destroyed. It can only change forms. So while I started this service and in this moment of real horror, explaining what it was like to watch what Tyree went through, it is really, really easy to say God was not there in that moment. God was not protecting Tyree Nichols. God was not there. But that's a God of a being in the sky, not a God that transcends time and space, that always exists and can never, never be diminished. So yes, I get it. I get it. Does not feel like God is at work in those moments. When people are gunned down in a dance club just because someone has a grievance against them. When children are murdered at school, it doesn't feel like there's one power and one presence active in the universe. It feels the exact opposite. But unfortunately, what it means is that we have all acquiesced our own authority, our spiritual authority, and our divinity, and saying, well, there's nothing can be done. It's just the way it is. It's in the Constitution, folks. You get to carry guns. So when does the Constitution trump the divine? When does the Constitution of any nation in any ruling class get to usurp divine authority? You have spiritual authority in each and every one of you. You do, because you are a being of the divine right here on earth. And when we can use it with love and wisdom and power and step up in our spiritual authority and say, no more. We will not rip people out of their cars and beat them to death in the name of our country, in the name of our authority. We will not allow people to buy guns that mow down multiple people in seconds, including our oldest and our youngest. Amen. It cannot happen anymore in our name. That's when we step up into the divine authority, that there is only one power and one presence. And how it happens, as I talked about at the beginning, is that we see each other as other. We see them as, oh, that's the Republican. That's, my father who votes for Donald Trump. That's my brother who thinks that there's too much government and we should close the borders. Those people we get to vilify. They don't understand. They don't understand that I have a daughter that's Mexican in heritage and that she wouldn't be here if the borders were closed. They don't understand. And I get into my righteous authority rather than having a conversation with them and telling them from my heart how it's so important to me that every being on the planet get honored. Do you know why we say grace before meals? It's because the living energy of the divine is in that food, right? The living energy of God itself is in the very substance we take in. And it's a moment of remembrance of the life that is given for our life and the circle that represents. So it's not just because your parents taught you to say grace. It's not this trick to teach you to be grateful. It's not a gratitude manufacturing trick. It's a moment of reverence for the life that creates life. It's a moment of understanding that there's only one. That which we do to the least, we do unto me. That which we do to the least of us, you do unto the divine. So we get to stand up. So yes, there is pain, there are problems in the world. It doesn't feel like there's one power and one presence, but that's because we have not stepped into our dominion. We have not stepped into the truth that we are the one power on the planet. And I'm doing it too. It's like, oh, I got too much to do. I got to take care of the kids. I got to run the church. The building won't, take care of itself. I can't do that. I can do lots of things, and I do lots of things. But what can I do using that divine wisdom? And this is the question for us. This is our opportunity to shift. This is our opportunity to know the truth and to step into it. Our fifth principle. Like, how do I move forward? How do I say no more? How do I say this has to change and I'm going to be the agent for change? Is it that you're doing volunteer work? Like our Nelson started a whole homeless outreach program right here, and Jocelyn and I sit on the advisory boards of it to end homelessness, or to at least alleviate homelessness and the pain and the trauma and the violence that is here. And right? Or how do we participate in a peaceful, serene, but strong march to end policing the way it is and open up the possibility of what it could be? That police and community work together. Again, not vilifying the police, because we've empowered them. We've financed them, folks. We paid for it. So how do we move? And that's where divine wisdom comes in, because we all have access to it. I don't have the solution for myself, much less all of us, but I know the solution exists right here and right now. I know that no problem exists without the solution being at hand, because the kingdom of heaven is at hand, right here and right now. What we have to we get to do, correct myself, is to open ourselves and be willing to do things differently, because if nothing changes, nothing changes. So are we willing to change? Yes. What do we want? Peace. When do we want it? Now. Where does it start? Here. Let's take that to our time of meditation.